Hello everyone, John AG here. Welcome back to my channel, Aurex. If you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. In this channel, you will find the real information, real market updates that everyone cannot tell you. So please subscribe this channel and love you all of my subscribers for your support. And please watch this video till the very end because YouTube will not push my videos to more people. Let us talk about the unvarnished truth. Let us talk about what silver actually is, far beyond the sterile charts, the algorithmic trading bots, and the mathematical abstractions spewed by mainstream financial media. Silver is the physical sweat of the earth. It is the original, uncorrupted money. Long before the Federal Reserve ever existed, long before central banks began their infinite hubristic experiment of printing wealth out of thin air to fund endless deficits, human beings measured their labor, their precious time, and their lives in physical ounces of silver. It is a metal that has brought down corrupt empires, funded the incredible expansion of the Renaissance, and acted as the unyielding, incorruptible ledger of human civilization. It is a fundamental law of economics that when governments lie, gold and silver step forward to tell the brutal truth. For decades, we have been living inside a financial matrix, a fragile system of grand illusions built entirely on credit, unpayable debt, and the false promise of infinite expansion on a finite planet. The talking heads told us that inflation was transitory. They looked straight into the camera and promised that our purchasing power was secure. But I want you to think about your own life for a second. Think about the last time you walked down the aisles of your local grocery store. Think about the heart-stopping price of securing a basic home, the cost of the fuel you put in your vehicle, and the crippling utility bills you face every month. You do not need an economics degree to feel the cold, hard reality. The money in your pocket is melting. It is evaporating. Your life's energy, which you traded your precious time on Earth to earn, is stored in fiat currency that is being quietly, systematically confiscated by a system that requires your silent impoverishment just to sustain its own survival. And amid this silent, insidious theft, silver sat practically dormant. It was manipulated. It was aggressively suppressed. It was shorted by massive, multi-billion-dollar paper contracts on the COMEX, keeping the price artificially, criminally low, so that the massive industrial behemoths of the world could consume it as cheaply as possible. But here is the hook, the absolute truth of physics and finance. You cannot suppress physical reality forever. You can print 1 trillion paper dollars, but you cannot print a single atom of physical metal. And in early 2026, reality finally broke the chains. I want you to vividly remember the absolute panic that gripped the trading floors earlier this year. If you were paying attention, you saw a market structure practically snapping in half. We saw silver, a physical commodity that had languished in the frustratingly tight $20 to $30 range for what felt like an eternity, suddenly and violently ignite. It more than quadrupled in value from its previous lows, rocketing toward roughly $120 an ounce in a matter of weeks. The global financial establishment was utterly stunned. They were caught completely off guard. They rushed their chief economists to the television cameras, the anchors on mainstream financial networks stammering and sweating as they tried desperately to explain away the historic surge as a speculative frenzy or a temporary retail short squeeze. But let me be absolutely clear. This was not a meme stock. This was not some digital token created in a teenager's basement. This was the most highly conductive, highly reflective, practically indispensable element on the periodic table, finally asserting its true, unmanipulated value in a world starved of real assets. Following that historic, breathtaking peak, we saw a brutal and incredibly calculated takedown. Massive paper dumps in the futures markets drove the price back down to the $76 range where it currently hovers today. Instantly, the massive institutions, the Bank of Americas, the JP Morgans, the UBSs of the world, began releasing coordinated reports warning that industrial demand is peaking and projecting that prices will inevitably fall further. They desperately want you to believe the rally is over. They want you to sell your physical holdings in fear so they can cover their disastrous underwater short positions. Do not let them shake you out. I repeat, do not let them separate you from your real wealth. What happened in January was not the end of the story. It was merely a terrifying preview. It was a massive flash of lightning illuminating the deeply fractured structural reality of the global economy. This pullback to $76 is not a defeat. It is the physical market catching its breath, finding a new, massive fundamental floor of support before the next, significantly more violent leg up. Because the underlying, terrifying mathematical equation that caused the initial spike has not been resolved. In fact, it is getting exponentially, catastrophically worse. Let us look at the undeniable, audited data. I want you to really process this fact. We are currently sitting in the sixth consecutive year of a massive global silver deficit. For 6 straight years, the human race has consumed significantly more physical silver than the global mining industry has managed to pull out of the ground. The Silver Institute itself, an organization not known for sensationalism, has had to confirm this horrifying, undeniable reality. Think about what that actually means in practical terms. If you, as an individual, spend more money than you make for 6 years straight, you inevitably go bankrupt. You drain your checking account, you drain your savings, you max out your credit cards, until eventually there is absolutely nothing left. The global silver market has been desperately draining its quote-unquote savings, the above-ground refined stockpiles, since 2021. Hundreds of millions of ounces of physical silver have been completely wiped from visible, trackable inventories just to cover this massive, gaping deficit. The legendary London vaults are thinning to dangerous levels. The COMEX registered categories, the actual physical metal available for delivery, are under historic, unprecedented strain. We are not facing a temporary supply chain hiccup. We are staring down the barrel of a structural, fundamental exhaustion of readily available physical silver. Why is this happening so rapidly? Because we are currently in the absolute grip of a dual technological revolution that simply cannot exist without this specific metal. We are constantly bombarded by politicians preaching about the green transition. We hear endless speeches about massive fields of solar panels, the mandatory transition to electric vehicles, and the construction of massive smart grids. What the politicians deliberately fail to tell you is that this entire utopian vision of the future requires an astronomical, almost unfathomable amount of physical silver. The photovoltaic industry alone is aggressively consuming hundreds of millions of ounces. As the world rapidly shifts to N-type high-efficiency solar cells, specifically TOPCon and heterojunction technologies, the actual amount of silver paste required per individual watt of power is surging. Solar manufacturers are desperately trying to de-silverize their technology. They are spending billions in research and development to find a cheaper substitute because the rising price of silver is utterly destroying their profit margins. But physics is a cruel and unyielding master. Copper oxidizes too quickly. Aluminum is too resistive. There is simply no viable long-term substitute for silver's supreme electrical conductivity and thermal efficiency in these high-output panels. But the green energy transition is only half of the horrifying demand story. Welcome to the era of artificial intelligence. In 2026, the global AI arms race has reached an absolute fever pitch. Trillion-dollar tech giants are completely bypassing traditional infrastructure to build massive, hyper-advanced data centers that consume as much raw electricity as entire sovereign nations. And what exactly makes these data centers function? It is not just lines of code. The internal architecture of these facilities, the incredibly complex, high-performance semiconductors, the advanced switching equipment, the massive thermal regulation units required to keep these servers from literally melting down, all of it relies fundamentally on high-grade silver components. AI is often thought of as an invisible digital intelligence living in the cloud, but its physical body, its actual nervous system on Earth, is built on a massive hidden foundation of silver wiring. And right here is the most tragic, critical difference between gold and silver, the hook that most retail investors completely miss. When gold is mined from the earth, it is melted down, turned into a beautiful bar or a coin, and placed into a heavily guarded vault where it sits safely for centuries. Virtually all the gold ever mined in human history still exists in its original form. But silver? When silver is mined today, it is aggressively pulverized, chemically altered into an industrial paste, spread microscopic thin onto a solar panel, or embedded deeply into the intricate layers of a microchip. And when that solar panel breaks, or when that smartphone becomes obsolete, it is thrown into a landfill. It is scattered. It is functionally destroyed. We are aggressively burning through the world's most critical, irreplaceable strategic asset at a terrifying, accelerating pace, at exactly the moment in human history when our survival relies on it most. While the Western world has spent the last decade gleefully playing digital financial games, printing trillions upon trillions of unbacked fiat currency, and deliberately suppressing precious metal prices to mask their devastating inflation, the Eastern world has been quietly, methodically preparing for war. I am not necessarily speaking of a kinetic military conflict, but a massive, structural economic war for the absolute future of global financial dominance. Look closely at what is unfolding in China right now. In early 2026, China's insatiable, ravenous appetite for physical silver drove their overseas purchases to staggering, multi-year highs. They are not merely buying, they are aggressively hoarding the physical metal. They are draining Western vaults of tangible commodities while simultaneously dumping United States Treasury bonds. The Chinese leadership understands a fundamental macroeconomic truth that Western retail investors are only just beginning to wake up to. In a world drowning in digital debt, whoever holds the physical commodities will absolutely dictate the terms of the 21st century, and they are actively tightening the noose around the neck of the Western financial system. At the start of this very year, China implemented strict, unprecedented new export regulations on refined silver. They are locking the doors. They are deliberately keeping their immense domestic metal production strictly within their own sovereign borders to feed their own solar and AI dominance. This is a monumental, earth-shattering structural shift. It means the unified global silver market is officially fracturing. We are completely leaving the era of globalization, where supply flowed freely across borders to meet demand, and we are violently entering an era of ruthless resource nationalism. Nations are recognizing that silver is a critical matter of national security. When a superpower like China actively restricts exports, the available global supply pool shrinks instantly and violently. The liquidity entirely dries up. This is the exact, specific catalyst that makes a physical market highly susceptible to explosive, violent, uncontrollable price spikes. The establishment bankers in New York and London are terrified behind closed doors because they are sitting on massive, leveraged paper short positions. They have been playing a multi-billion-dollar game of musical chairs for decades, selling paper claims on silver that does not actually exist. But the music is finally stopping, and the physical silver simply is not there in the vault to back up their fraudulent paper claims. Why does this deeply complex macroeconomic situation matter to you, the viewer watching this video right now? Why am I sitting here, passionately, almost desperately begging you to fully understand the massive gravity of this situation? Because deeply hidden behind all these technical charts, behind the high-stakes geopolitical maneuvering, and behind the staggering industrial demand figures, there is a profound, incredibly real human tragedy unfolding in front of our eyes. It is the tragic, systematic destruction of the working class. Every single day, millions of hardworking people are waking up before the sun rises. They are sacrificing their precious time, they are destroying their physical health, and they are missing irreplaceable moments with their families, all to earn a fiat currency that is mathematically, systematically designed to lose its value by the very central banks that issue it. The crushing inflation we are experiencing is not a political accident. It is not a mistake. It is a mathematical, absolute requirement of a debt-based Ponzi system that is rapidly spiraling out of control. When a government runs multi-trillion-dollar deficits year after year, they have only one option. They must print currency to fund the shortfall. And every single new digital dollar they create instantly dilutes the value of the hard-earned dollars sitting securely in your bank account. It is a hidden, insidious tax that requires no legislation to pass. It is the silent, ongoing confiscation of your life's labor. You intimately feel it when you attempt to buy a starter home for your family and realize the dream is aggressively slipping further out of reach. You feel it deeply in the pit of your stomach when you look at your grocery bill and silently wonder how you are going to continue to feed your children if prices keep rising. You feel the constant low-level anxiety, the underlying hum of social instability that deeply permeates every aspect of modern society. That crippling anxiety is the direct psychological manifestation of living entirely within a deeply dishonest, fundamentally broken financial system. Physical silver is the tangible antidote to that modern anxiety. When you hold a 1-ounce physical silver coin in the palm of your hand, you are holding something incredibly real. You are holding a tangible asset that required massive human labor, immense heavy machinery, and incredible amounts of raw energy to blast out of the solid earth and refine into perfection. It absolutely cannot be keystroked into existence by a corrupt central banker sitting behind a computer screen. It cannot be artificially inflated or diluted by a politician's reckless spending bill. It is a dense, historical store of ultimate value that has successfully survived the chaotic rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the hyperinflationary nightmare of the Weimar Republic, and literally every single failed fiat currency experiment in the entire recorded history of human civilization. By taking your depreciating, dying fiat currency and legally converting it into physical silver, you are doing something profoundly, beautifully rebellious. You are completely opting out of their rigged, predatory game. You are actively building an impenetrable financial fortress around your family that is entirely immune to the reckless, destructive policies of desperate politicians and cornered central bankers. Do not allow yourself to be easily fooled by the barrage of mainstream headlines you will inevitably read today and tomorrow. As silver quietly consolidates around this $76 mark, gathering strength for its next explosive move, you will witness a highly coordinated, well-funded media campaign deliberately designed to demoralize you. You will read slick articles written by Ivy League economists claiming that the silver bubble has definitively popped. You will see deeply flawed, heavily biased reports from major financial institutions desperately telling you to sell immediately, absurdly claiming that the massive 6-year supply deficit is magically going to vanish into thin air. I urge you to ask yourself a very simple, logical question. Why would these massive trillion-dollar institutions that have literally been fined billions of dollars by the Department of Justice in the past for criminal spoofing and actively manipulating precious metals markets, suddenly care so deeply about your personal financial well-being? Why are they so incredibly desperate to convince the average retail investor that physical silver is a terrible investment? The brutal answer is because they are trapped on the entirely wrong side of the trade. They desperately need you to sell your physical metal in a panic so they can desperately buy it. They absolutely require retail capitulation to cover their massive, bleeding, underwater paper short positions before the entire system violently unravels. Do not willingly hand them your metal. Do not surrender your tangible, hard, real wealth for their dying, rapidly inflating fiat currency. The fundamental mathematical case for silver has never been stronger in the history of global finance. We are staring directly into the face of a 6th consecutive year of massive, unfillable supply deficits. We have an explosive, unstoppable AI technological revolution that is entirely, fundamentally dependent on unparalleled silver conductivity. We have a government-mandated global energy transition that requires hundreds of millions of new ounces annually just to maintain its current trajectory. We have a rapidly fracturing geopolitical landscape where the incredibly powerful BRICS nations are aggressively hoarding physical commodities to back their new financial systems. And above all else, we have a global fiat currency system that is mathematically, undeniably doomed to relentlessly inflate until it eventually collapses under the immense weight of its own unpayable debt. The sudden, violent price spike to $120 earlier this year shocked the unprepared world. It woke millions of people up from their financial slumber. But I am telling you right now, looking straight at the undeniable data with absolute, unshakable conviction, that January was only the opening act of this financial drama. We are currently sitting quietly in the deceptive eye of a massive hurricane. The true storm is incredibly far from over. When the next massive wave of demand hits, when massive industrial users like solar panel manufacturers and tech giants suddenly realize they literally cannot source the physical metal they desperately need to keep their multi-billion-dollar factory lines running, when the COMEX vaults officially drain to zero critical levels and they are forced to declare force majeure, and when millions of panicked retail investors violently stampede toward the tiny exits of the burning fiat system to find a safe haven, the price of physical silver will not just merely rise, it will fundamentally revalue. We are looking at an impending paradigm shift where the historical gold-to-silver ratio, which currently sits completely, absurdly detached from all geological and historical norms, will violently and rapidly snap back to reality. Silver is mathematically, geologically, and historically destined to violently close the massive valuation gap with gold. I must state that this is not standard financial advice given by a licensed broker. This is a desperate historical warning from someone who sees the writing clearly on the wall. This is an urgent human plea for you to fully open your eyes to the harsh, unforgiving reality of the economic system you are currently living in. Do not sit passively and wait for the mainstream financial media to finally give you permission to protect your own wealth. By the time the television anchors officially admit there is a massive physical shortage, the metal will already be entirely gone from the market, and the new price will be absolutely untouchable for the average working-class person. The critical time to aggressively position yourself is exactly right now, during these quiet, highly engineered pullbacks, when the weak hands are shaking out and the smart money is silently accumulating every ounce they can find. Take a hard, honest look at your current portfolio. Look deeply at your life savings. Ask yourself, with brutal honesty, exactly how much of your family's future wealth is dangerously tied up in fragile digital illusions, overvalued tech stocks, and unbacked government paper promises, and how much is securely grounded in tangible, undeniable, immutable physical reality. We are currently standing right on the precipice of the single greatest transfer of wealth in recorded human history. Wealth, by its very definition, is never truly destroyed. It merely changes hands in times of crisis. It moves rapidly from the trembling hands of the ignorant and the unprepared directly into the steady hands of the educated and the resolute. It moves from evaporating paper illusions back to solid, tangible reality. I deeply want you, your children, and your entire family to be positioned squarely on the right side of that massive historic transfer. I want you to successfully weather the coming, inevitable financial storm with your profound dignity, your hard-earned wealth, and your ultimate freedom entirely intact. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for actively seeking the unvarnished truth in a world increasingly built on complex deception and financial lies. Hold the line with unwavering strength. Continue to aggressively stack your physical ounces while they are still available. Fiercely protect the ones you love and stay profoundly, permanently awake. This is John A.G. signing off for Aurex. I will see you all in the very next update.